Hey guys, welcome back to the farm channel here. And you can see I'm out in the middle of this bean field. If you remember, I did a video of this field back in May when I planted it. I had the boys with me and we were just wrapping up finishing this field, and it's hard to believe, I don't know if you can see that, how tall these things are. These things are huge beans. Now, height in soybeans doesn't always equate to yield. So there are a lot of pods on these beans, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. But soybeans are a little bit different than a lot of, than corn mainly. Obviously, they're a legume. They manufacture their own nitrogen versus corn. You have to give it a lot of nitrogen. The soybeans make their own. You can kind of see it. Those little white balls are the the nitrogen that it has created. Those are the nodules that the own plant has created to feed itself throughout the year. So pretty unique plant. But we planted these May 3rd, and I was really nervous about if they were going to make it. It was kind of too wet, and today it's August 17th, I believe, and I wanted to talk about our spacing, our population, and overall the beans in general. Now, we planted these at about 140,000 beans per acre, and we've got today around 110. So in the germination process, because we were a little bit wet and stuff, I lost 30,000 beans to an acre, but that's not always bad. Soybeans, they can make up for that. What I mean by that is if you have a bunch of soybeans stacked side by side, you'll overall have a bunch of plants, but each plant's going to be smaller, it's going to be weaker, it will produce less. Now, that doesn't mean you can just go plant 5 plants per acre. Obviously, it can't make up for that, but they can make up given the space that they're provided. And we're finding that by dropping soybean populations, which has been happening now for a while, can really change the overall makeup of your field. Now, these beans were on 30-inch rows. You cannot see the rows whatsoever behind me. They're completely canopied and closed up. But I did go ahead, obviously, and pull this plant. Let's turn this thing around and we'll talk about it. So, on a good year, you'll have anywhere from 40 to 60 pods per plant, maybe more. A lot of these I'm finding anywhere from 50 to 75, but right there's a 2-bean pod. You ideally would like to have a bunch of 3s. The average is about 2.5 beans per pod. Right there is a 3-bean pod. Now, if we were to break one of these open, there's a 3-bean. If we were to break one of these open, the soybean is far from maturity. Being mid-August, these rains are really going to help with pod fill. We're still making yield right now in August versus corn. Corn's pretty well wrapped up with maturity and yield making, but with beans, we're going to rely on a lot of August rains to help fill these pods out, get larger beans, heavier beans, and that can really significantly improve yield. Now, I talked a lot about how tall these things were. I wanted to kind of dig back and just show you kind of what the ground looks like. Now, there's 30 inches in between here, between the plants. Now, you look down there and it looks just like a jungle of plants, and there is, but this is what I mean by the plants making up for themselves. If you can see that, look at this plant right here. That's a really weak one. Not necessarily because it got planted too close together, but it just overall never really turned into much. You can see it's just kind of a straggly one. But right here, look at this one. Super, super big stalk. It's got plenty of room versus maybe where they're planted closer together. If you can see right there, they're a little bit smaller stalked, not quite as many beans on them. They don't have as much branching going on. This would be branches. The branches can of course house more pods, and there's a fine line there. They say that somewhere around that 80,000 plants per acre is pretty ideal, and I'm definitely going to be lowering my population for next year. Now, I do have some issues going on in this field right now. The big one being white mold. White mold is a stalk rot issue. Let me see if I can find some. Of course, when I need to find it, I can't. There was some right back here. Let's see here. Right here you can see some white mold. Right there. And it's just that. It's a white mold that grows down here under the canopy. Under the canopy, you know, of course it's bright and sunny, but down here below, it gets dark and it stays moist. And if we peel all this back, you can see how moist and dark it is down here. It's a perfect spot for fungus to come up from the soil. Now there's fungus everywhere in the soil all the time, but in the right environment, that fungus can use the soybean as a host. And that's exactly what the white mold's doing. Right here's some more white mold. That's a better visual of it right there. Now what this white mold does is it basically kills the plant. It's stalk rot. It will rot that stalk right there, and it'll end up killing this plant, very likely, if it keeps going. I don't see large widespread areas where I've got soybeans dying. I do have some areas up in here, but it's pretty hit and miss, so I'm not too concerned about it. There's really nothing I can do right now, but if it does get pretty spread out, it can really knock on your yield significantly. I know a lot of producers that had it last year, but they say planting in 30-inch rows will really deter white mold, and that's another reason why I did it. But when these beans got so tall, it really made that understory a lot darker. We've had adequate moisture, and it was just a perfect environment for white mold to grow. Some say that white mold comes if you planted soybeans there before. Some people say it's in your soil all the time, no matter what. It's just whether or not it gets the perfect environment and the host to grow. But typically, the only good thing is they say that you only find white mold in your best soil and on good beans. So hopefully I've got both of those. So yeah, you peel these back, you can see they're potted up, top to bottom. That's the size of the pods today. And right now, like I said, they're filling that pod, creating weight. And these soybeans are pretty much fully mature. I have no more flowers up top. They've reached maximum maturity. So from here on out, all they're going to do is they're really not going to produce any more pods. They're just going to fill these pods. And soybeans are light sensitive. That's another unique thing about them. Soybeans know when the days are getting shorter. They know when winter's coming. So they're going to shut down at a certain point and say, okay, we're done making pods, we're done flowering, we're going to fill the pods that we have, and then we're going to start to lose our leaves. What happens is, as the daylight gets shorter per day, that soybean shuts down, it loses its leaves, all of these leaves fall off, and you're going to be left with basically a stalk sticking up, a stalk that looks like something like those. And you'll come through here and we'll cut them down here with the cutter bar, and we'll be able to eat through all these. So these will get harvested, I don't know, maybe sometime in mid-October, depending on weather from here on out. But we've had a little bit of rain here over the weekend, so you can see we've got adequate moisture here right now. I would have liked to see more rain, but we got enough. And these plants are really good at funneling what little rain we get down the stalk and getting it right to the roots. Mother Nature provides a funnel channel. The way they're designed, when rain falls down on these beans, it runs down the stalk and they put it right where they need it. So even a 1/4 inch of rain or a couple tenths of rain can add a big benefit to something like this. So doing today, out here checking the beans. You can see they're blowing around like crazy in the wind. This is a 20-acre field right here. I have no idea what these are going to yield. I've got some pretty high hopes for them. I think they look good. I got them planted pretty early. Because they're delicate to sunlight sensitivity, planting them early is very beneficial. Obviously, you're going to get more sunlight. They create and grow pods, obviously, from maximizing the amount of sunlight. So the earlier you plant them, the longer they will bloom, the more pods you will get, and the more beans per pod, which relates to yield. So I got them planted early enough. I'm going to plant even earlier next year. Now, in the back, you saw my wheat harvest video. I've got double crop beans planted back there. They look phenomenal as well. We'll talk about those at a later date as we get closer, but these beans are pretty well mature. Going to be harvesting them here in probably a month and a half, 2 months. So I can't wait to run the combine through here and see what in the heck is laying out here for yield. For soybeans, it's so hard to estimate yield. You know, how many pods per plant. I mean, you've got, you know, millions of pods per acre to guess on, and you know, the soil type varies, and the height varies, and the amount of pods per plant. You know, when you're talking 100,000 plants per acre, and you know, how many pods does each plant have? Is there 55 pods, 70 pods? I mean, the difference right there is a 30 bushel swing, and how many pods, or how many beans per pod? So a lot to factor in. So really, you just need to run the combine to figure out what the heck your yield is. But overall, I'm very satisfied with this. We did do a foliar feed application on these about a month ago, and that is where I had a guy come in and fly a drone over the top of these beans, and they applied a fertilizer to the leaves, and that fertilizer was absorbed through the leaves. We put on a big mix of potassium. Potassium really helps with pod and flower development. We put on a lot of different things to try and help give these things a boost. I saw the yield potential. We had the rain, and so we'll see if that pays. And can't wait to run the combine through here. So it'll be here before long. We're just out here checking beans. I want to give you guys an update. So that's what we're doing today. Thanks for tuning in.